have an addiction to suffering. And that's what I left with. I'm like, all right, what does that even mean? And how do I work around that? It's really easy to chase the dragon, especially as an entrepreneur. Like, I'm not doing enough. I should be doing more. Time. Why aren't I here? Why aren't I there? I'm guilty of doing that. I've been there. Like, I've said to myself numerous times, in not the best headspace, like, I should be here. I have my health. I have my dream house that's aligned with all the important things, from health to wellness, taking care of myself, taking care of my family. It's looking at your blessings, counting your blessings.
Ben, thanks for coming back on the show.
Thanks, man.
Beyond profits and products, what do you hope your legacy is when it's all said and done?
I hope my legacy is 25, 30 years from now, chilling out, and I'm hanging out with my son, and he is just a stud. But like, not in like a superficial way. Like, he is just a man of like a good man, you know, traveled, educated, and not educated in the sense of how we think educated, just like he's seen the world, he's done cool shit. He's making a difference. He's making an impact and a difference in this world. I think if I could instill the values and the things that, you know, have led me in my journey, the positive things, you know, it's not always positive. Sometimes, you know, you got to go through the, you know, the dark with the light. But I think seeing that, I think that's my legacy.
What do you hope he remembers you for?
Just being good, always being there for him, I would say. You know, he may not like what I have to say sometimes, but I'm always going to be real. I'm always going to be honest. That's the most important thing.
What do you think people are getting? Like, how old is Max now?
4.
4 years of parenting. What do you feel like you have learned about parenting that you wouldn't have expected when you started? And what do you feel like you're doing better that you wish other people knew about parenting?
I mean, it's a roller coaster. I mean, you can read every book, you know, in the library about parenting and raising a boy, but pretty much throw that out the window. I mean, these are human beings.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously a lot of it is just common sense. You know, it's trial and error. I mean, there's days, the big thing is just patience. I've learned a lot of patience, you know, being a father, where because you can't just walk out. You can't just say, fuck it. You know, like, you gotta, there's no off switch when your kid is having a meltdown in an airport or on an airplane.
Yeah.
You know, you're consistently troubleshooting, but it gets better.
Uh-huh.
You know, it gets easier in time. I mean, he's 4. It's really fun right now. He's been a mama's boy for 3.5 years. Now he's starting to come around. He's like, "What's up, Dad?" And he is my son. I mean, he's a ball buster to the T.
Yeah.
But like, I'm getting a taste of it's like I'm ball busting a little version of myself that's giving me a hard time all day. It's a bit of like a taste of my own medicine. It's hilarious. He's funny. It's really funny and fun.
I've been going back and forth on this whole idea of like personal development. I think there's this constant, when you're a high performing person, you're an entrepreneur. I think when we hear like personal development, I've tried to reword that, because personal development means where you currently are isn't good enough. And there's this constant striving of like, I have to be better. I have to be better. I have to be better. And I'm starting to learn more about personal exploration, because I think the more you know yourself, the better you're able to develop, because you understand yourself better. What has being a father taught you about you?
That you can't necessarily control your destiny. You can only control yourself in the moment. You know, it's like, and I've caught myself, like, things that I wouldn't pay attention to that I may have said to Max, or, you know, I just, lost my shit when I shouldn't have lost my shit. And I take a step back and I'm like, oof. And he's absorbing it, and then he's looking at me, and I feel that transaction. Like, that's my judgment. It's like, all right, it's like, dude, you got to be better.
Yeah.
You got to be better. I mean, I even remember just, we're all human.
Yeah.
I've lost my shit. I lost my shit when he was tiny. He was a tiny little baby, just screaming and screaming, and you're exhausted. And you're like, this is like the first 3, 4 months, 5 months of when he's born. This was pandemic. Like we didn't have the pamphlet.
Yeah.
And you lose your shit sometimes. And it gives you the opportunity to actually grow as a human being, grow as a person. And you realize, like, listen, man, your job is to keep this little thing alive. And then from there, like, when it goes from from infant to crawling to toddler, like there's a phase. There's a you watch that development, you watch that growth, and that gives you an opportunity to actually shift and to change as your baby's growing, as your kid's growing. So
especially when they start talking, because now you
they
have
can
like a
communicate.
mirror.
I mean, that's all it is, right?
Yeah.
They're all, the moment they come out, they're screaming because they want some booby milk. It's and it is, they latch on within 2 minutes. Like, that's innate. It's a beautiful thing to see. Like, how does the baby know to do that? Like, and then the next thing is they start to communicate, and every sound means something because they want something. So you learn to adapt as the baby's changing, and you adapt with your kid. But as they start, their mind starts forming, that's an opportunity to challenge them in a way where you can see their evolution, and you can see them grow, and you can start planting little seeds as they grow.
I've seen through the time that we've known each other, I've seen you more as like a conscious entrepreneur, like somebody who's focused more holistically on the development of the self while also developing their company and trying to grow their wealth and all these types of things. What has been the catalyst change for you being a father now in terms of what drives you?
Well, I would say 4 or 5 years ago, I had a big shift. I was a bachelor entrepreneur up till I was 40, and I met my wife, right before the pandemic. So everything shifted, like everything shifted. My business shifted. Suddenly, like, it wasn't about me. It was about my wife. It was about my son. Obviously he was born 10, 11 months later. So you realize you have to take a back seat for yourself to some degree, because it doesn't become about you, and then you're intertwining business, right? Your business supports your family. A lot of shifts during that time period of just change that were outside of what I could control. You can adapt, but again, those are all lessons in the things that you can't control. So I would say, like, along that line is, like, I try not to stress about major changes that happen all at once. And I've learned to just let it settle before I react. It's like I'm dealing with tariffs right now. 145% tariffs on goods. Like, that's a kick in the nuts.
Yeah.
And if I was to have that 5 years ago, I'd be in a my head would explode. I wouldn't know how to deal with that. But it's like, it sucks. Take a step back and you realize, all right, well, what can I learn from this? How can I shift in this? And how can I actually use this to my advantage? Where, a big instantaneous shift like what we're seeing, people panic. So it's like, you can panic and run with the sheep, or you can take a step back, let the people panic, but yet, what's coming from that? Suddenly we've had an influx of, like, calls. What's going on with ingredients? Oh, can you get this? Can you secure that? All right, so we'll work it. We'll work with it.
So not every crisis is a crisis, basically.
No, you can't. You got to do your best not to live in fear, right? when you live in fear is when the panic happens. When the panic happens, the mistakes happen. So, I've learned to just be a little bit more patient, be a little bit more cool. I mean, listen, man, like, we're all human. I'm not saying like I'm that stoic where, yeah, man, of course you panic for a little bit, but you got to do your best in your headspace. And that's where all this work comes in of like meditation and just like being above it. Because it can get the best of you. Yeah. I mean, of course I've had sleeping nights, and it's really easy to go down those rabbit holes of fear, right? Like, what if this happens, then my business is going to suffer. And if my business suffers, then, what if I go bankrupt and then this happens, I'm going to lose. It's really easy to go down that rabbit hole, but it's also better to just stay cool. And you know what? Yeah, like, I don't know how long the 145% with the tariffs and all this shit going on. Like, yeah, there was some ups and downs, some highs and lows, but you do your best to stay in between. And you gotta be realistic. Like, shit could go the other way, so you plan.
Some days, like what I've tried to work on, because when you're in the early phases of entrepreneurship, and I've had this conversation with you before, the sky is falling all the time.
Of course.
It feels that way.
Mhm.
Like, because you don't have the reps, you haven't gone through big shifts. Like, you haven't gone through crazy adversity yet to know what you can withstand, what your business can withstand, and what it can't. And I listened to a Chris Williamson episode, and this guy, Joe Hudson, talked about this idea that I really like. It's mourning the worst case scenario in that moment of intense fear
Mhm.
and accepting it. So it's
Mhm.
like, the example he used is when you get in a fight with your wife, separate from that situation while the emotions are high and go mourn the relationship.
Yep.
Act as if it's over.
Yeah.
Mourn that feeling, and then you're able to step back up to the plate and
Yep.
have a more open and honest communication of like, okay, this is actually, if I am going to mourn that, this is how I'm thinking about it. Well, this is what I would have said if the relationship were to be over. So now I'm just going to say that now because I've already gone through the emotional cleansing of
Right.
feeling that pain. And the thing about entrepreneurship is like, we're so designed to be like action oriented and accomplishment oriented that you don't want to give yourself those moments because it feels like a weakness.
Mm.
But in a scenario like, we've been through it where I'm sitting there and go, let's cast this out. Worst case scenario, what happens? Well, the business goes under. Okay, what happens then? Well, I can do this, I can do that. And then you start playing all this out and you realize that phase of your, like it's not a loss.
For sure.
You've gone through enough, you've learned enough to where you're never starting from zero again. You're just starting from a more knowledgeable place. So it gives you that peace, but then you can take that peace and operate more systematically instead of emotionally, because both we're the same sort of entrepreneur. We're both highly creative, which highly creative people are highly emotional. It's just the fact of the matter. I wish it wasn't like that. I wish I could be stoic and creative at the same time, but it's for some reason those two are kind of married together. But getting out of that, what has been the practices? Is it just a reps thing?
I was going to add from one thing that you're saying is like, one thing I learned in that state of emotion, in that state of panic, fear, those emotions, acknowledging it. Okay, right. Well, the sky hasn't fallen yet, right? So what do I do in between? You let it breathe.
Mm-hmm.
That you just gotta let it breathe. And fortunately, you have the tools now to adapt. You have the tools now to realize like, all right, well, this is just a feeling. Let's go. Let's take the day off. Let's go walk on the beach. Like, you gotta reset. And time after time, yourself after a while. You're like, I'm going into the state of fear. Like, what do I have to do to turn it off? And that becomes, we're all different. We all adapt.
When we go through these like emotional panic zones, health wise, it takes the largest toll.
Oh, big time.
Something I wrote an essay recently on the cost of winning too early.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about in my own career at many stages, like the first couple of businesses that I had, the one that stuck out to me was when I did this horse feed venture. the reason I started that venture is because of the projections. This guy presented me this projection sheet, which now when you think about it, like being a true entrepreneur, you're like, what are projections? They're just made up numbers that have no real significance. But to me, it was a Excel sheet, which I barely knew how to use, with 7 figures on it in year 2. And I was like, oh my God.
Chasing shiny objects.
Yeah, chasing shiny
Sure, I can
objects.
sell fucking horse manure.
Yeah,
Gold on it.
you're like,
I'm
let's
in.
do it 100%. And I went down that road for like 9 months. I like committed I'm an all-in guy. When I see an opportunity, I'm just running full head of steam. And I'm so grateful that that ended up imploding in the way that it did, because let's say that did end up being true.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say I did become a millionaire year 2 of that business. Well, in that scenario, I would probably be really miserable now.
Yeah, man.
At 25, because I invested into something that I wasn't connected to from my soul.
Here's the but, and here's the caveat. It's like you can look at that as a negative, but you can also look at that as a positive, especially for young entrepreneurs, or, folks that like know that this is their path. And I always say, you got to try on different things. You got to do things that you may not like, that are really uncomfortable, and you try it. Because guess what? Like, I look back at the first jobs, like right out of college, I didn't overthink it. It was like, all right, like I got my first job in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, selling ingredient commodities. The fuck was that?
Yeah,
I was like, all right, sounds good. Can I make a paycheck and make some money? Sure, I'll do it. I didn't overthink it. But I like looking back at it, it was such a valuable experience in my journey, and it all like connected. I was literally sharing an office out of this guy's small house on a phone, dialing for selling ingredients, like 10 hours a day with this guy right in front of me doing the same thing. So I did it for a year, but it was great because I was like, all right, I actually learned how to do it, and I became relatively decent.
Mm-hmm.
Then I started my own. That was my first business. I started selling commodities, specifically ingredients. It's like, fuck it. I can pay for my own phone line, and I'll do it out of my house, and I've got the connections. So I did it, and I made a decent living, but I hated it because I didn't know at the time that I was a creative.
Mm.
And when you're a creative, numbers are not necessarily like logical.
Yeah.
And it's a numbers game, right? And you're like, you're burdened, but it hardens you. And you realize, like, at least for me in that experience, like the horse feed, I was like, I never want to be in a business where it's about a fraction of a penny and there's no creativity there. And no matter how good of a salesman you are and how good you can close, if it's about a fraction of a penny, like they'll call you up and be like, hey, well, listen, Ben, you're a good dude. I love you. Like you've been super helpful, but like I'm getting it for a penny less. And you're like, I'm selling my soul for a fucking penny.
Yeah.
I mean, pennies add up sometimes, but
it's interesting though, because I love having these conversations, and everybody finds meaning through different things. But the people that I've met that get to the top of the mountaintop that are the most empty are what I would consider like the deal makers. They're the middlemen. They're always this person that's like, trying to find somebody to match with somebody else so that they can make a little piece in the middle. And I actually had this instance recently where somebody came to me and they were like, you have a resource, you have this community or whatever, and there's this company that if you put these two together, you can pull out something for yourself in the middle of that.
Right.
Old builder is like, money? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Like whatever it takes. What I'll do it. I'll whatever I have to do in that moment. A part of me stopped and I go, well, what's the true value of this? Let's say it makes 6 figures for that little slice of the pie.
Mm-hmm.
How much time goes into that?
Right.
How much energy am I using on that versus using it in the thing that I'm building that I get a bunch of like fulfillment and all these types of things. And when you win too early in that middleman seat, you spend your whole career building, like you're finding the people that have truly built something. Like that's why me and you have always connected on such a deep level, because you're a builder. You're a great salesman, but you're also a great builder. You for the people that watch previous podcasts, like you built a product that didn't exist in the market at the time. That's a crazy idea. And it's also this idea of thinking of something, thinking this could be this way, and then actualizing it. It's like one of the most euphoric, like sober drug inducing things that you can do. It's like this in between line of like, almost it feeds your ego too much in certain instances. Like you're like, even there's days now where I want to feel super important because I'm like, this is all just in my head at one point and now it exists.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's this crazy idea, but that fulfillment that you get from building, you can't get that from the dopamine of being the deal guy. Like at least not what I've found.
Yeah. I mean, again, with age, with experience, with going through these lessons, like you said, if you had that opportunity to get that deal done, like it sounds exciting, but you realize like, all right, well, who's behind it? Is it going to fill my soul? And you're learning at a relatively young age that like, you can't chase everything that comes your way. And
it's not even so like, I'm fine to put those two people in a room.
Yeah.
I just don't want anything.
You don't want to, yeah.
I don't want.
And that's, so to your point, a lot, you're going to have a lot of that, right? Like you're with your business, you're meeting tons of people, and you're like, oh wow, after a while, you're like, fuck it, I'll like just put them together back. Cause it will always come back tenfold somehow, some way, they'll remember that. There's always, I don't want to say there's a favor that comes with that, but like, you just keep doing you. There's so many people that are out there to make that quick buck for that quick deal. It doesn't end up favorable. I mean, you got to value your time after a while. That's one thing that I've definitely gotten taken advantage over the years, and it is what it is. But listen, it's a numbers game. It's just one out of 10. Maybe you have nine people that, all right, maybe take advantage of you a little bit, but whatever. You just keep plugging along, and
it's this idea of watching the scoreboard. That's the biggest thing. Naval Ravikant, it talks about this principle of like, if you really want to be successful, you can't do two things. You can't count the score and you can't count the time. Because if you look at the scoreboard and you look at the time for, a long part of your journey, you're going to be behind in both.
Yep.
You're going to wish you were further ahead than you were at that moment. And you're going to think that you're behind on the score. Yep. But when you're casting, I think you become such a prisoner of the moment in this day and age, not only with like social media constantly reminding you of like where other people are at in their journeys and where you are. And it's this weird comparison trap. But then there's this also like self-actualization that every entrepreneur builder is pushing towards to like be this version of themselves that they see. But that the time that goes into that, it's usually way longer than you expected. And usually you're losing more than you're winning to get there. It's not until you have big moments like I'll have even recently we've had like the big aha moment, like, oh, that's what all that work was for.
Yep.
But if you were constantly waiting on that opportunity and constantly counting the time of like, all right, I've been doing this for X amount of years, so like should be here any minute.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious for you being in the phase of building that you're at now. Do you find yourself looking at the clock at points?
There's days for sure. I'm like, fuck, I'm still grinding this out. We're going on year 18. And it's very, again, talking about the rabbit, it's very easy to go down that space of like, fuck, I'm still hustling sweeteners here.
Yeah.
It's finding that space of gratitude in the journey. Like, yeah, it's frustrating. I've shared with you, I don't want to say I missed my exit, but I did miss my golden exit, but that's okay. Lots come out of it. It's in the journey, it's in the space of positioning yourself, doing the things that you love doing. I'm a creator, man. I love building shit. I do it all the time. I'm relatively good at it. I can build I would say like my superpower, seeing the white space, adding a good brand around it, positioning it. And now it's like, all right, if I want to create something or build something, I would say like what I've learned over the years is like, where are my strengths, where are my weaknesses, how do I build businesses around putting the right people in place to create kind of like the super force. This is the super people.
Did you ever find yourself being an addict to suffering through building?
Oh, big time. If, in one of my last ayahuasca journeys, that's what came up is like, I have an addiction to suffering.
Mm.
And that's what I left with. And I'm like, all right, well, what does that even mean? And how do I work around that? And it is, it's really easy to chase the dragon, especially as an entrepreneur. Like, I'm not doing enough. I should be doing more. Time. Why aren't I here? Why aren't I there? Like, after a while, you can drive and I'm guilty of doing that. I've been there. Like, I've said to myself numerous times in not the best headspace, like, I should be here. But after a while, I'm like, I'm healthy. You gotta get down to the basics, right? Like, I have my health, I have a beautiful home, I have, my dream house that I'm building in Costa Rica that's aligned with all the important things from health to wellness, taking care of myself, taking care of my family. Um, it's really looking at your blessings, counting your blessings.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can be in that space and have work, like, I'm super grateful. I still have a great business that's producing and allows me a great lifestyle. Like, that's, I'm the 1%. Like, life is a gift at this point, and how do I fill, professionally, how do I fill my cup and the things that I actually enjoy doing? And I stopped adding a lot more stress on myself of like, I need to be here, I should be there. No, just like listen, and it's not always gonna work. How many times do you come to my office? You're like, what are you working on? I'm like, what do you think about this product?
Yeah.
I'll try it, and I may have a deal on the table, but it may not go through, and it's fine. I enjoyed the journey to get there.
There's this saying that I heard on Sunday: when you're on purpose, he was talking about it in a religious context, but I think it applies to everything. When you're on purpose, disappointment, you're able to stand tall through disappointment.
Sure.
When you're off purpose, disappointment can be devastating.
Yeah.
It's this idea of like, when you're chasing the thing, or you're chasing the dollar, you're chasing that moment of like self-actualization or like the money or whatever it is, one little thing can throw you off and your whole world comes crumbling down because you built your identity on this house of cards, basically, on something that you thought you wanted. But I don't think enough people spend the time to actually ask themselves, what do I want?
Right.
And why do I want it?
Yeah.
What I talked about through that period of after True Feeds ended up imploding, as it would have when you're kind of misaligned in that way. I had 6 months of nothing. At that point, I had been an entrepreneur for like 2 years of like really pushing, tried a bunch of things. I was always trying to come out with something different. I was always starting this new side hustle, that new side hustle. And I had 6 months where I had nothing. I had less than $1 in my bank account most days. I'd get a little something from my serving job or a little something here, and I'd just, spend it for food, whatever. And I had to sit there. At this point, I was super just smoking all the time because I was trying to cope with the stress of, holy shit, I'm 22 years old. I am failing my way through college because I'm not taking this seriously because I really want to build a business. And I have nothing to show for it for 2 years. No, and I would have conversations with my mom where she's like, are you sure this is what you're like? I think you need to go get a job. I think you need to. And I kept pushing back, but I had this 6 months of just sitting in my house days on end, just asking, what do I want to do? If money wasn't an object, what would I do? Because right now, money isn't an object. I don't really have any money to show. I don't need it right now. And that's where the theme page of Grit Mentality was born, that turned into Grit Media. And it was this like moment that I look back on now at my lowest, probably the most depressed I ever was as a builder, came that moment of like, okay, this is what I would do. And it's constantly checking in. Did you have a moment like that during your career?
All the time, man.
Yeah.
All the time. It's totally normal.
What was
but
the
you have to go, but to your point is like, if you don't go through those experiences, like, how do you get to where you're supposed to be?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
When you were going from commodities to building Pure, did you have that gap? Did you have that period of time?
Yeah, after commodities, I was making a living, but I didn't know exactly, but I knew enough that it didn't fill my cup,
Uh-huh.
and I wasn't aligned, and I could have wrote it out, and I could have, I made a living. I was doing all right, it was years ago, but I was 20 something years old, making 60 grand a year. It was fine. It was paying the bills, gave me enough money to go out on the weekends. It was fine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I wasn't so focused on like the big check, or I was just like, all right, well, I got enough to live. It's kind of enjoyable, keep moving forward. And then after that, I got a real job. I worked in a family business, which I didn't necessarily want to do, but again, looking back, it was invaluable because that gave me the opportunity to try on things that I didn't know was really my gift.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was kind of like shifting from commodities to getting into selling commodity type baked goods. It was like, all right, well, and then from there, it was like, all right, well, I realized I was an idea guy,
Mm.
and I was looking at something that was just so, literally like factory baked goods. Like, what can we do that's niche? Where can we find white space? And I'm super grateful I had that opportunity to actually create products there that didn't exist.
Mm.
And yeah, that's kind of where I learned that process of, specifically within food. Um, one thing my dad said to me is like, listen, um, don't learn what you can here, because I'm going to sell the business, and so don't expect it. So I was like, all right. So at that point, I was like, I'm going to learn as much as I can, whether it's 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. And I just did, and it was great. And I learned distribution. I learned how to navigate the food industry. Um, I learned how to create products that didn't exist,
Mm.
from branding to design. It was awesome. And I was able to take that parlayed that into, my next venture, which was, developing a healthier version of Red Bull. That didn't necessarily go anywhere, but in that journey, or I should say on that path, I stumbled across stevia. And, everything kind of happens for a reason. And what aligned for me, when I took the leap in, with Pure, was, you know, doing good while doing good.
Mm.
Stevia didn't necessarily exist. It tasted like shit. How do I make it taste good? How do I figure out the highest quality source? And, from there, that was my big shift. And I moved down here, and I put everything I had into it. And it was fun. Like, I guess, I would say, not I guess, but the unknown is something that I enjoy.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Still to this day.
Yeah. Like, is it going to work? Is this something that can create change? But you got to buy in. You really have to believe it, and you really have to buy in. And I didn't build my company from the headspace of this is going to build wealth. I built the company from the space of this is going to create change, and I can make a good living if this works.
It's that's the thing that I think we're from, like, an education system. I heard this point and I loved it. I was the kid during school that was obsessed with one thing, and I was an outlier because of it. It was football for me at that point in my life.
Right.
All I could talk about was that. All I did outside of school was think about it, watch highlights, train, do all these things and like, I had a buddy in high school one day when we were driving to school. He's like, bro, do you ever just like not talk about, like, do you have anything else in you? And at first I felt really bad about myself. I'm like, not really, like, kind of a shallow kiddie pool here. Like, this is kind of all, this is it. This is who I am. But because we're taught, get all the extracurriculars you can. Do all the sports. Don't just do one. Do this, do that. Never have a second, like, through your childhood and like into like that adolescent period, never have a second to actually think. Just do, just try, just whatever. I think there's some good to that, but then you get to college and you're, the valedictorian, you have all these credentials, and then you have to go get that same social proof in college, and then you go work at private equity or you go work in finance. Because what does that give you? Optionality. I'm never having to really zone in on one thing ever. Because if I spread my attention across all these different modalities or all these different things, I can never be disappointed. Because if I suck at this, I can always do this. And if I suck at that, I can always do that. But there's this spiritual sense of going all in that we're not ever given the permission to do in that phase of life. And even now.
Well, because do you really know what you want in your in your teen years, and even in college? At least for me, I know what the fuck I wanted.
But
I mean, I had an idea. I knew, like,
I don't think you should, though. I
No,
don't think you
but
need to know. I think it's more so that what you're talking about, that sense of just push all the chips in. Like, if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, you can't escape that point.
No, you find the thing that you love and you go in.
But how do you find the thing that you love? You have to go all in on something that you hate before you go all in on something that you love.
Well, again, everybody wants to be an entrepreneur, right? But then there's the reality of, like, who's going to be an entrepreneur that's successful, and what is success to you, right? Success means a lot of different things to different people. Is it how many commas and zeros are at the end of your bank account? Maybe. If that's the case, go be a banker. You make a ton of money doing that. I mean, it takes a while until you have that exit, until you have your day. You're reinvesting in your business. It's tricky, and I think a lot of people who want to be entrepreneurs, they think it's fun. It's not.
They don't want to work for anybody. That's what it is.
And they think it's a quick, a quick fix.
Yeah.
I'm 18 years in this motherfucker. I mean, it's been a good run, but being an entrepreneur 20 years ago meant you don't really want to get a real job.
Yeah.
Now it means you don't really want to get a good job.
Yeah, it's like there's like
because it's easy, but
that's the fallacy that lives there. It's like the thing I hear all the time. I don't want a boss.
Right.
It's like, okay, well then don't get into entrepreneurship, because at least the construct of being in a traditional system, you know who the boss is.
Mm-hmm.
For a lot of time, if you're not keen on it, you never know who the boss is, but you have bosses.
Right.
Really, you want to know who the boss is? It's wherever that green is coming from. That's the boss.
That's right.
That's the boss. And being in service, or in your situation, being in CPG, the customer is the boss. They're the people that are driving the growth of the business. And with you, it's thousands upon thousands upon thousands upon tens of thousands of people that you're having to service with your product. In our business, it's tens to 20s of people that you're having to service at once. It's like, if you don't want a boss, that's not the way to go. Like, if you don't want a boss, go be a nomad.
Yeah. That's
pretty much, you don't want to answer to anybody, go be a nomad. Go be like even a freelancer. You have bosses. Like you never get out of it's the ego that's telling you, like, I don't want anybody to tell me what to do. Well, then who's gonna hold you accountable? Like, who's gonna actually grow you? Because half the times we don't know what we need or what we should do to level up.
Yeah, big time.
So then your phase of life that you're in now, your drive, you have what you want.
To some degree. I mean, listen, you always want more. I mean, you're always thinking.
For what reason?
I'm still competitive, man. There's that competitiveness that doesn't go away. Take money aside, like, I pretty much have everything that I need. You've seen what I got going on in Costa Rica, like. And I'm really happy when I'm in Costa Rica. I mean, that there's a lot of intention that went into that space, just creating that, like, perfect space for me to thrive.
Mm-hmm.
And even in that space of thriving, like, I'm actually working less, ironically enough. And when I focus my energy and shift it from, I'm waking up, I'm meditation, I'm surfing, yoga, gym, taking care of myself, and then, what's great is it starts super early there. I'm working by 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, and that's 3 to 4 hours of hyper focused work.
Mm-hmm.
That's like how I have it set up. And
Yeah.
of course, if I need to take calls, I'll take calls, throughout the day. But I'm really focused there in that space of like calmness and just the environment. I'm really productive, and it's just like the creativity and the inspiration, and I'm just like empowered. So I'm blessed in that, and I'm really looking forward to just like that routine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, I noticed like being in Naples, it is a different environment. I mean, you're surrounded by, you know, excessive abundance. And no matter how successful you are, you just feel like I'm not doing enough. And it's weird. It's like your own psychological fuck of like, and
It's
and you realize like but you said for what? That's what I keep asking. I'm like, why am I like for what? What else do I really need? And if I go into and if I go into flow state, things just actually automatically happen. Like it's the craziest. Every time I'm in Costa Rica, man, like the deals that like fall into my lap with me just like walking on a beach or not doing anything, you know, it just happens. So I'm a true believer when you can find that flow state and you be like being in calm and being in just alignment, like things just like or things organically happen.
ambition is like the root of all suffering. And I
Yeah.
think what I've had to teach myself, I'm a hyper competitive person.
Hmm.
And I used to wear that as badge of honor. I used to, look at that and be like, yeah, there's not many people that are as competitive as I am. Like I wore that, and because I thought that from an identity perspective made me better. But what I've learned is that is, if I look at all the suffering in my life, it's from that hyper competitiveness in me. Not to say that it shouldn't exist. I think we have this dopamine side of ourselves that wants to constantly achieve, but if it's unbalanced, you're spending more time in like the cortisol aspect of your life than the serotonin, like the bliss, the magic mushroom trip type of vibe. Like you're never getting yourself to that point when you're constantly in this go, 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 count the score, try to beat somebody else, try to do something else. And, even for myself in the recent months, it's been, I have too many ambitions.
Hmm.
I have too many things that I'm trying to be good at, that it's the root of all my suffering. So I'd rather pick one thing that I'm striving for and be comfortable with. This is going to be the root of my suffering. Accept that. You can't get away from it if you want to do anything significant, but accept that, be okay with that, and let go of everything else.
What about changing your language and your experience in that phase? Like, why do you have to necessarily suffer unless you want to make yourself suffer? That was that whole like, conversation we just had of like, you can still be like being competitive doesn't go away, man. You
No.
know how competitive I am still
Yeah,
at
yeah,
6 years old. Like I'll go box you,
yeah,
I'll box you
yeah.
tomorrow,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I'll go tooth and nail even if I break my elbow doing it.
yeah.
That doesn't go away, but you shouldn't have to. Your competition shouldn't make you suffer.
Uh,
Like take that energy. Like it's almost taking that energy and finding a way to find the zen in the competition.
that's
When you could find that flow state.
There's like this idea around like yoga, and why yoga is such a powerful tool is because you can be the most like flexible, I guess. You can do the poses the best, but it's so internal. Like
Mhm.
it's so like through the phases that I've done yoga like consistently, you get such a hyper awareness of yourself because you're the only one that's able to hold the pose, to do the stretch, to do these things. And there's no dopamine associated with nailing like a certain pose. Like you don't get the same dopamine that you get from like closing a deal or something like that. But it's applying that yogi mentality to your life in general to business. It's the self exploration. It's the like bettering the self that's the outcome. But I also wonder, does that mean that you will always stay in a point of like, you hear the word delayed gratification, but is there a permanent delayed gratification? Like, when do you actualize, like, talking to you off camera, it's like, it doesn't seem like you've ever taken that sense of gratification like that. It seems like you're still in the delayed gratification. Where do you get that sense of gratification, if ever?
I would say you just have to be disciplined about like reminding, like, wake up, man. It's just simple shit. Take 5 minutes with meditation and just put yourself in the headspace of gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
Whether like you got to clearly, like, you can't be competitive about it.
Yeah.
So you think, all right, well, I've worked my ass off. What do I have, and what am I grateful for? And also looking at it from a space of like, all right, well, I have, like, these are all blessings in my life. I do have my health. Like, what if I didn't have my health? What would that look like? What if, my son was, if I didn't have a healthy son, what would that look like? It's all perspective, man. And like I want to jump on the yoga thing. Like, it's funny because I started my yoga journey 25 years ago. And I initially walked in, and it's all going to circle back around on everything that you're saying. I walked in, was like, wow, there's like 30 women in this class, no men, and 25% of these women are attractive. And I went in, and that's how I started my yoga journey. And then it became competitive because I was like, wow, like, how, like, I'm an athlete, I can do that.
Uh-huh.
And then it became competitive. And then I started actually like shutting my mind off and realizing for an hour, guess what? I'm not as competitive, but I'm actually, after I go through a pretty rough class, my endorphins are through the roof and I feel a sense of peace.
Mm.
And that's when I really started getting that yoga vibe and like, all right, well, there's more to this than just all women.
Mm-hmm.
And that helped me throughout the years to take, and it became a part of like, all right, well, I have a monkey mind. Like, I'm going at 1,000,000 miles per hour. I'm competitive. I want to do all this. I want to do that. I want to build this. Like, to shut your mind off for an hour for the day, because it's hard, right? Like, when you're in these poses and you're like, fuck, when are we going to be done? Like, you're distracting your mind, and you're not thinking about the next deal you're trying to get. And I realized, like, all right, well, I got to do 3 days a week of yoga because to turn my mind off for that, for an hour is important. And then it became like, all right, how do I actually shut my mind off for an hour plus a day? What does that look like? And it was really helpful. And this was before, this whole world was on the wellness kick. I initially got into it because, I realized it was really important to just shut it off, and it became beneficial.
Yeah, it's you get more downloads from like not striving. Recently I was I did like the float tank, like the sensory deprivation tank.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of hard workouts. The first time I did it, I was stoned going into it. So it was like super easy. You just lay into this salt bath and you just fall asleep. And you wake up 60 minutes later, you're like, oh, that was great. I feel super zen. This time, dead sober, go in, is 60 minutes. It's the longest 60 minutes of my life because what I was able to sit in this tank, and there's a bunch of things that I went through. The first one was you watch all your thoughts roll in. But the thing about myself personally is when I have those thoughts, my gut reaction is to action. Okay, I have this thought, act on it. I have this thought, act. It's like it's the way that I'm wired, and I can't do that in that moment. Like, there was a bunch of times where I was like 15 minutes in, and I was like, all right, I got what I needed out of this. I can jump out, and then I stopped myself, and I was like, okay, no. But then I just have to move on to the next thought that came up, because if you stay stuck on something, you're just going to want to try to fix it. And then I got to brief moments of pure nothing, and you feel so human in those moments. Like, you're in this tank, and all you can do is feel your blood coursing through your veins. You hear your breath. You realize I'm just a sack of bones and muscle tissue, and I'm just butt naked sitting in here. Like it was so cathartic in the sense of I had never gotten to like that inbox zero moment on my own. It was always assisted by something else.
Have you learned to just observe your thoughts?
Yeah, it's like the car passing analogy. Have you heard that?
Yeah.
It's like you're sitting on a bench,
You just observe, man.
watch them.
Like, shut it off. Observe. The big ones always pop in when you're not paying attention and you're not trying. At least for me.
It's because how many things do we do in a day to day to get a download? Like I can think about even like psychedelic trips that I've done where I'm like, all right, I'm going in. There were times that I've done some psychedelic journeys where I went in with the intention of finding my $1 billion idea. And I'm like,
It doesn't work like that.
That's exactly what I
It's
recognize. I came out more confused than I did going in.
Yeah.
Because it was in like this fist closed, trying to figure it out. I'm going to muster up the energy. But like the best ideas, the best breakthroughs hit you like a Mack truck when you're not looking.
When you're not looking, and it usually evolves from something else that you're not even paying attention to. And I mean, I've worked with ayahuasca quite a bit, and it's funny. It's like I seem to be a go-to a lot for a lot of friends, or like, hey, I heard you work with the medicine, like,
Yeah.
and then the questions are like, well, I want to go into, like, I want to get out of my journey, like my next $1 billion idea or this and that. I'm like, dude, it doesn't work like that. And it's even hard for me, like going into a week journey to like, it takes me a good, like the second ceremony to really like let loose, or let loose isn't the right word, but surrender. That's the biggest thing. And that's, if you can learn to surrender, man, like things just flow in.
Now the question, because I was, I'm in this period right now of like sobriety for the first time in 5 years, like fully sober, like no alcohol, no weed, no magic mushies, nothing. I just have to sit. And I realized how often I was trying to go to the thing to give me the download. But when you like take out all the common denominators, where do the downloads come from? It's usually from you. And I realized there was this visual from these guys that talk about their near-death experiences and like going to either heaven or hell or all these things. And one guy had this moment where he was really addicted to, I think it was heroin or something like that. And he died and he went to hell. But hell didn't look like, fire and brimstone and all that type of stuff. It was him in what looked like real life, searching for the thing, the heroin, and never being able to get to it. And when I heard this, I was like, oh my God, what's my thing? Even if you took right now, if I had no access to, let's just take weed as an example. If I had no access to weed, would I only be thinking about that thing, trying to get to that thing? And I started to like think about that. I was like, oof, if I died tomorrow, like, would that be it? Would that be what I'm constantly searching for in the afterlife? I hope not. And I got really addicted to this idea of like releasing those attachments and being really comfortable in the right now, in the shit where like things are, because when you remove yourself from all those, you have two main states. When you're constantly attached to something, you never get to true euphoria. You never get to the 100%. And the reason why we do a lot of these attachments or these vices in general is to never get to zero. That despair, that total like, oh, everything. The world sucks right now. We want to avoid those, but you can't have you can't have the euphoria without the pure despair and the pure hole, the bottom. And I realized like even now being like 5 or so weeks into it, you want to tap into that without having to be attached to anything.
Well, that becomes your drug. You're still chasing something.
Exactly.
It's finding the balance in that something.
Yeah. Yeah. Because then you have like the sober acolytes that are like, nothing would be the same if I weren't sober.
Yeah.
Well, then sobriety's your drug then.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. So how can you want everything and at the same time want nothing. It's like, where's the balance in that? I don't know. I don't have the answer. I'm still trying to figure it out.
Say that again.
How can I don't even remember what I said.
How can you find balance?
Yeah. Well,
Right.
how can I want nothing while still wanting everything, I guess is the other way of saying it.
Right.
It's, I don't know. I'm still working through it because I think I'm also just the all in guy. So it's like now that I'm all in. So
why don't you take some pressure off yourself? You thought about that?
I've thought about it. I think there's still like a psychological process that I'm going through right now. Like,
It's all stemmed from something.
I mean,
it's understanding the why.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where psychedelics for me, specifically ayahuasca, it helped me understand like
what's the root of it?
What's the root of it? You know, like why do I have challenges doing this? Why am I full speed ahead there? Why, why do I lack certain emotional? Yeah, and that's.
Can you ever get to the bottom of that though?
Yeah, of course.
You think?
I mean, I have. Not everything, but enough to understand, the questions that you're asking right now are things that in time you'll start figuring out, whether it's through mistakes, through challenges, through, but like you also have to be a little bit easy on yourself.
Well, that's the why that I've found recently is self-love.
It's a big one.
So for me, a lot of what I did was because I didn't love myself.
It's a big one.
And loving yourself, like everybody hears that and they're like, what do you mean? But when you love yourself, you can love doing nothing. When you love yourself, you can love striving. But when you love yourself, you can love yourself doing a substance. But when you're constantly, like for me, I got to the root of what was happening. And the reality is I never wanted to love myself. And I never wanted to give myself the space to love myself. And I didn't know how to. And you're just constantly in the cycle of, well, I don't want to feel that. So I'm going to get away from that. And now I'm having to counterbalance. And the other addiction that I had was like endurance sports. I would do all these crazy races. Why? It's because I still am doing them, but I didn't love myself enough to be okay not being a, psychopath that does all these crazy races.
Well, without like beating yourself to death on like analyzing the why, like, listen, dude, you're competitive, right? You enjoy it.
Yeah.
You're actually not thinking about work
and
the grind and what you think you should be doing for a couple hours throughout the day. Like, dude, that's your yoga. There's nothing wrong with it. Like, you don't have to overthink it.
No,
you enjoy this, and it's healthy and it's good, and like
there's nothing wrong with that. There is something wrong with doing, like, I always think about this with trying to create a platform. I never want to have to live up to the public perception of myself in private.
Sounds like an insecurity thing.
I mean, but it's also
There's nothing wrong with that.
There's a lot of people that I've met in the world that we're in that have to put on publicly because of a persona they've built. And when in private, they're not that person. So for me, like what this period was is two things. I still love endurance sports and I'm still going to do it. But now I go one layer deeper. It's not I'm going to do this because I need to, because in order to fulfill my identity, I have to. I go one step deeper and I'm like, why? Why do I want to do this? Well, I want to know what it feels like to be standing on top of the highest point in Telluride, 8 hours into a race when I live in Florida, the entire year, and I've never been at elevation, 8 hours into a race. I want to know what that feels like, and I want to see who I am in that moment.
So there's purpose, no ego.
It's exploration.
Experience. Yeah.
That's where I go, tying this all the way back to the very beginning. That is where self-development becomes your crutch and self-exploration becomes your soul. Like that's the soul.
Right. But that's good, man. Like I think some of our first conversations were around exploration of like, what was your thing, and I sounds like you took that advice to some degree.
Yeah.
Just like do the things that may be uncomfortable.
And
out of that uncomfort. You find comfort, and also like, all right, well, I've never been here before. I've never tried that. Like, suddenly your mind opens up to different ideas.
So that is the point that I think, because I'm not saying you should run away from discomfort. I actually, when I went skydiving, it was such a cool experience because usually I do these races, and when I do races, it's psychedelic. It's like, and I was always trying to pinpoint why that was, because I've done psychedelics and those have been really helpful. And then I've done these really hard races and those have been psychedelic. And then I skydived, which was like totally different, but it was psychedelic. Why? It's because you're touching this point of something that you've never experienced before. You're getting just a total new download that you've never once saw.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's where the best ideas come from. That's where the most clarity comes from, because you go back to, who am I?
Yep.
Like, I'm just this human that's trying, like, basically this, evolved monkey who's just trying to, chase status and money and all these things. It's like, what I really want is, I want surprise.
Yeah.
I want difference. I want exploration in a different way. I don't know. What's your realm of like what you want to try to tap into in terms of like something that tickles your fancy of like, I'd like to see what that looks like.
I mean, I got a couple of years on you. I mean, I'm pretty blessed to do the things that I've done. It's tricky now, with a family and a 4-year-old, to allow myself the flexibility and the freedom to explore the way that I used to explore. But we do what we can as a family, which is there. We're still trying to figure it out. I would say I want to get back to that exploration, and make it a bit of a discipline of like, all right, I think I go to Costa Rica, just booked a flight on the 24th. I'm there for a few weeks getting the house done. And I'm like, what really hit me, I'm like, wow, I have access to some really cool countries that I haven't even been to. Like, I'm going to go to Guatemala. I'm going to go, fly down to different parts of Brazil, like do these things I have access to. I don't want to say distracting myself, but like, that's something that I've realized that fills my cup, that exploration. Like,
Yeah.
And it has set me back. I haven't been able to do it the way that I used to do it. I'd love to get back to that, because you get so much from that, and it's again leaning into that uncomfort of like curiosity.
Do you think it's required to feel fulfilled to be in some ways selfish?
There's selfish and there's self-care. There's selfish and there's self-care. You got to kind of take both of those hand in hand. But listen, I want my wife to be selfish and self-care, and that's where the balance is. I mean, how long have you been married?
3 months.
3 months.
Yeah.
It's work.
Yeah.
It's
totally.
a lot of work, right?
Yeah. The thing that a moment that stood out for me, I always thought, like, I've heard the ball and chain thing. I've heard all of these different, like, some people when they're married, they get married to somebody that doesn't want them to explore. The good news is, at least with my relationship, I got married so young that I still, throughout our entire relationship, one thing has been constant. Jamie is always doing something in this very explorative, like, never been done. Like, for instance, my wife not hates, but she's not a fan of the psychedelic thing.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't understand it. She doesn't get it. And it's been hard for me sometimes when she explains that, because I look at it as judgment. But in reality, it's just she doesn't get it. But she's never said, you can't. It's always been, go explore, go do your thing.
Sure.
And the thing that I've tried to always encourage in her, selfishly for myself, is go explore what you want. She loves going and doing stuff with her girls, and like go. Like, I told her this, I'd never want to be in a marriage. And part of the reason why I got married so young is because I knew what I had, Like she had seen me at 19 and she sees me now. Granted, I'm going to be much different in 5 years from now and 5 years from then. And there's going to be tension in terms of that growth. But every phase, it's like the same thing. I'll change, she'll change. There will be this disconnect, but the ability to just come back to each other and go, I accept you. I accept this new version of you.
Yep.
You accept this new version of me. Let's date again. That's why dating, I hear that. And like, I've heard people be like, never stop dating. And you don't realize it until now where you're like, yeah, that's because you're constantly meeting a new person.
For sure.
So it's such an interesting.
And it keeps it exciting. And, you know, you're keeping up with each other.
Yeah.
And you got to keep it fresh.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's not easy.
So you're wanting to just get back to traveling back.
Yeah. I'd like to get back to my roots of just exploration, being of service to some degree, again, in a different way. Like I'd like to really hook onto some sort of cause and focus some energy into that. Maybe that comes in Costa Rica. I'm being completely open to that.
Do you have any
idea?
Capitalistic explorations that you still want to?
With business?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing it, man.
Yeah.
You know, it's fun. I feel like I'm getting better at finding, like, as opposed to forcing something, but finding opportunity, or the opportunities kind of find me, and then I start building around it a little bit better. You know, I share this, like, I won't build anything by myself anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I won't do it. It's finding the pieces of the puzzle where I'm adding value with my superpowers and they're adding value with their superpowers. I've got a couple interesting things cooking, from a beef tallow project to a liver project to.
You're rocking something right now, aren't you?
What I got?
Your shirt?
Oh, this is a fun little project. Actually, amazing company, Capalo. A friend of mine, I invested, super passionate about, and a part of this journey with Capalo is it's actually all about exploration and quality, and more than just a shirt or more than just specific clothing. It's made for people that are on that same journey.
To explore.
And, not compromising in the experience, not compromising in the quality. And it just feels good.
Yeah.
So yeah, shout out to Capalo. It's actually the best. When I put it on for the first time, I was like, holy shit, this is the best t-shirt. And I'm a t-shirt guy.
Yeah.
It's like, this is fucking
You're
amazing.
a clothes guy. You always come dripped out. Yeah. Ben's a really, really cool founder.
Yeah.
Talk about somebody who's on mission.
Yeah. Ben Rose. So he that's been a fun project. He's been, but he's an entrepreneur. You've seen his journey and what he's built. And I get excited when I see other entrepreneurs follow their passion, their dreams, and take that leap when you could see their alignment is there. So when I invest, I like to have that alignment. So he's a good dude. We'll talk to Ben at another point.
Yeah.
But shout out.
Ben, thank you for coming on, man.
Yeah, man. Good to see you, and you're killing it.
Thank you, man.
Proud of you. It's been amazing watching your journey and the success that you've had with Grit.
Wouldn't be here without you, brother.
Yeah, man.
Boom.